Remember when Hollywood spent 90 minutes making you fall in love with two people who never shared a scene and then gave them 4 minutes at the end to actually meet? And that was somehow all it needed? Well, that was Sleepless in Seattle. Nora Ephron's 1993 romantic comedy about a widower who couldn't move on, a reporter who couldn't let go, and a movie that somehow convinced an entire generation that this was destiny. Tom Hanks played widower Sam Baldwin, who broadcast his sadness to a late-night radio audience that hadn't asked for it. Meg Ryan played Annie Reed, a woman who heard him do exactly that, and then spent the rest of the film deciding what to do about it. Bill Pullman played the fiancé, who never had a chance. Rosie O'Donnell played the best friend, who was right about everything from scene one. And today we're going to count down 15 weird facts that you didn't know about Sleepless in Seattle. Stick around for number 1, because a song that everyone associates with the movie is the one that Nora Ephron spent the entire production keeping out of it. Before we get started, hit like and subscribe. Come on, two strangers fell in love over a radio signal. Subscribing is one button. You can manage it. Alright, let's get out to Seattle. Number 15. The English teacher who ran a taekwondo school changed romantic comedies forever. Jeff Arch was not a screenwriter, at least not in any way that Hollywood recognized. He spent his 20s running concert lighting for rock tours, hanging out around the edges of the film business, but without ever cracking it. Then he wrote an off-Broadway comedy. It sold out 3 weeks of previews. The critics buried it the night it opened for real, and Arch walked away from writing for like 3 years. He landed in Virginia. He taught high school English. He opened a taekwondo school. None of that reads like the origin story of the man who was about to reshape American romantic comedy. But then his son was born, and the whole picture rearranged itself. He gave himself 1 year to write 3 screenplays. He sold the school, and then sat down to do it. Sleepless in Seattle was the second one. His agent sent it to producer Gary Foster, who was crying by the time that he reached the end. So the script that dragged the rom-com back to life in the 90s came from a guy who taught grammar and proper kicking form in the Virginia suburbs. Sometimes the right story finds the last person that you'd ever look for. Number 14. Half of Hollywood passed before Meg Ryan got the call. Julia Roberts got the first offer, and she turned it down. Then all your normal names, right? Michelle Pfeiffer, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Jodie Foster, Nicole Kidman, Demi Moore, they all circled it and then quietly drifted off. Deborah Winger wanted in and she didn't land it. So the role finally found Meg Ryan, who was Nora Ephron's first choice before Ephron was even hired to direct. Arch had written Annie for her. Ephron pictured her too, and half a dozen bigger names couldn't shake either of them loose. The role of Sam took the scenic route, originally written with Kevin Costner in mind and then handed to Ryan's own husband, Dennis Quaid, who was attached to play her love interest. We'll get to exactly how that conversation went here in a bit. So the most beloved screen couple of 1993 wasn't assembled so much as survived a year of near misses. Kim Basinger looked at the movie about two people who fell in love without meeting and then decided that the whole thing was ridiculous. She watched it make $228 million. Tough one there, Kim. Number 13. Tom Hanks got the first Jonah fired, and then owned up to it. Nathan, what was 8 years old, the casting director's adorable favorite and Nora Ephron's first pick to play Jonah. They got him in costume, they rolled cameras, started shooting, and a few days later, he was gone. The part the kid never deserved the blame for, it was Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks found him distracting. The boy kept running his lines off camera while Hanks was trying to act in scenes that the kid wasn't even in. And Hanks, by his own admission years later, was being a diva about it. He copped to prowling the set as a cranky actor and asked why the 8-year-old had so many of the good lines. America's dad quietly resenting a second grader's screen time. So they reset, and the hunt for Jonah had already run through a who's who of future famous kids: Elijah Wood, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ben Savage, Ryder Strong, Jason Schwartzman, even a 17-year-old Leaf Phoenix, who was too old for it and still a few years before going by Joaquin. None of them got it. The part went to Ross Malinger, the kid from Kindergarten Cop, whom Ephron remembered from an earlier audition. Whatever the first take was missing, Malinger had it on contact. Hank said the boy understood the difference between reciting lines and actually playing a scene, and that the second they started working together, it became a movie. Years later, when Aaron Carlson tracked what down for her book, he barely remembered any of it. He said Rosie O'Donnell was nice, Efren less so, and that was about the extent of it. His verdict on getting cut from the classic before his 9th birthday? I was 8. Fair. Most people don't remember their first firing either. Number 12. Nora Ephron fired Meg Ryan's husband before filming began. Back in 1991, before anyone was directing this thing, TriStar sent the script to Meg Ryan and her husband Dennis Quaid. They loved it. Quaid was set to play Sam, and then the project stalled out. Ryan got pregnant and the whole thing went quiet. So, by the time it woke back up, Nora Ephron was running the show. She rewrote the script and knew exactly who Sam was, and that was Tom Hanks. Only nobody had relayed that to Ryan, who came back assuming that she was still co-starring with her own husband. Enter the conversation that producer Gary Foster simply called difficult. Ephron sat across from a married woman and explained kindly but firmly that her husband was wrong for the part and someone else was right. Ryan apparently took it well. Quaid was out. What replaced him would become one of the defining screen couples, really, of the decade. 5 years later, Ryan and Hanks reunited for You've Got Mail, a great rainy Sunday afternoon movie that still holds up today. Ryan and Quaid divorced in 2001. Make of that what you will. Number 11. The James Bond composer didn't want to score 20 classic songs. John Barry defined the sound of James Bond. 11,007 films, 5 Academy Awards, and the man who arranged the Bond theme that still sounds like danger 60 years later. He had just landed another Oscar nomination, this one for Richard Attenborough's Chaplin. That was when Nora Ephron hired him to score Sleepless in Seattle. Then Ephron handed him a list, 20 songs from the American Songbook. All licensed, all locked, all going into the film no matter what he wrote around them. Barry quit. He wanted to compose a score, not stitch original music around 20 recordings that somebody else had already made. The two jobs couldn't coexist, and he had zero interest in haggling over it. So the gig went to Mark Shyamalan, who'd made his name arranging for Bette Midler and Billy Crystal, not by any obvious measure John Barry's heir. He walked in and made it work anyway. His song for the film, A Wink and a Smile, landed an Oscar nomination. Harry Connick Jr. is great. And Shyamalan went on to rack up 7 Oscar nominations total, win a Tony and a Grammy for Hairspray, and then build one of the most versatile composing careers of his generation. John Barry presumably enjoyed a very pleasant vacation that year. Number 10. A favor from Elizabeth Taylor's ex-husband saved the movie. Seattle in 1992 had no real film soundstages, and Nora Ephron flatly refused to move production anywhere else. So after weeks of scouting warehouses and factories, the team found the decommissioned hangars at Sandpoint Naval Air Station. Huge, purpose-built, exactly what they needed. But there was only one problem. The Navy kept saying no. Then Ephron picked up the phone and called John Warner. Warner had run the Navy as its secretary in the early 70s, which already made him useful. He'd also, somewhere in there, been married to Elizabeth Taylor. Yeah, her 6th husband, wed on a hilltop at his Virginia farm in 1976 after the two were set up on a blind date at a dinner for Queen Elizabeth II. Of course, that's a sentence that deserves a second read, but I'll just let it sit there. They divorced in 1992, and Liz Taylor said that she couldn't take the loneliness of life as a senator's wife. So Warner made one call, and the Navy said yes, which is how the most iconic sets in a movie about destiny got greenlit by Elizabeth Taylor's ex-husband. Number 9. A convicted felon approved the most romantic shot in the film. The Empire State Building's management wouldn't close the observation deck for filming. At the time, the building was run by Leona Helmsley's organization, and Helmsley was, to put it gently, indisposed. She'd been convicted of 33 federal counts of tax evasion, conspiracy, and mail fraud. She dodged roughly $1.7 million in taxes, drew a $7.1 million fine, and was serving her sentence in the Federal Correctional Institution in Danbury, Connecticut. So, Ephron called a publicist friend who happened to represent Helmsley. The publicist drove out to the prison and put the question to her directly. Helmsley said yes, but only for 6 hours. That was the whole window. In those 6 hours, the crew grabbed the aerial helicopter shot, the lobby scene with Annie arriving, and Jonah pacing the observation deck asking strangers if they were Annie. The actual reunion, the one that everyone remembers, was recreated later on a Seattle soundstage. So the observation deck finale of a movie about destiny and romantic faith was personally signed off by a woman doing federal time for tax fraud. Destiny works in mysterious ways. Number 8. They shipped the same door 2,500 miles for a shot that only lasts a few seconds. Now, early in the film, Annie walks out a door in Baltimore, and a beat later, Sam steps out of what looks like the exact same door in Seattle. It's a quiet visual argument. These two are already living parallel lives, and the movie connects them long before they connect themselves. To pull it off, the production did what any calm and measured filmmaking operation would do. They used the literal same door on both coasts. They shipped it clear across the country so they could shoot the second half. Efron called it a moment where they really went for it. They actually shipped the door from one city to the other. It only works if it's truly the same door. So editor Robert Raytano and Efron built the match on purpose, and the framing had to line up from both coasts or the whole cut falls apart. They made it the same door. Problem solved. Now, most viewers clock the edit and they never catch the trick, which seems to be exactly how Efron wanted it. Her word for the whole movie was timeless. Timeless things don't announce themselves. They sit there until you're ready to see them. So after this, you're going to go back and watch that movie again, and you won't be able to unsee it. Yeah, you're welcome. Quick pause. Are you Team Walter or Team Sam? And if you're new here, hit like and subscribe because we do this every day for the movies that you grew up with. So make sure that you ring the bell so we don't have to go searching across the coast to find you. All right, let's get back on the air. Tom Hanks has shared the screen with countless actors throughout his career, but in Sleepless in Seattle, one of his most memorable scene partners was actually his real-life wife, Rita Wilson. Married since 1988, Wilson appeared in the film as Susie, Sam Baldwin's sister. Interestingly, that wasn't the role she originally wanted. She had her eye on Becky, but once that part went to Rosie O'Donnell, Wilson happily stepped into the role of Susie instead, and it turned out to be the perfect fit. One of the movie's most unforgettable moments comes when Susie passionately retells the ending of An Affair to Remember, becoming so emotional that she can barely finish the story. Although Nora Ephron was known for expecting actors to stick closely to her scripts, Rita Wilson added one small improvised moment at the end of the speech. Rather than cutting it, Ephron loved it and decided to leave it in the film. That little change sparked another. Watching his real-life wife become emotional inspired Tom Hanks and co-star Victor Garber to create their own playful response on the spot. Instead of tearing up over a romantic classic, they jokingly pretended to cry over the war film The Dirty Dozen, dramatically mourning one of its characters with the same over-the-top emotion Susie had just shown. The contrast made the scene even funnier, and Ephron kept every bit of it. What makes the exchange feel so genuine is that the chemistry wasn't manufactured. Hanks was teasing the woman he'd been married to for years, and Wilson reacted with the familiar expression of someone who had experienced that kind of playful ribbing countless times before. It's the kind of authenticity you simply can't fake, and it became one of the movie's most charming moments. Number 6. The legendary cinematographer behind some of cinema's most serious masterpieces gave Sleepless in Seattle its unforgettable look. At first glance, Sven Nykvist seemed like one of the last people you'd expect to photograph a romantic comedy. Born in Sweden in 1922, he built his reputation working alongside legendary director Ingmar Bergman on deeply emotional classics like Cries and Whispers, Fanny and Alexander, and The Virgin Spring. His work earned him 2 Academy Awards and established him as one of the greatest cinematographers in film history. By the early 1990s, Nykvist had already spent decades creating visually stunning dramas that explored some of life's biggest questions. Then Nora Ephron asked him to make Seattle feel like the city of longing, hope, and romance, and he accepted the challenge without hesitation. Nykvist had a reputation for working incredibly fast while relying on natural-looking light instead of elaborate setups. Efron often admired how he could light an entire scene in only a few minutes, creating soft, elegant images that carried emotion without drawing attention to themselves. Efron also had a carefully planned color strategy for the film. She intentionally limited the use of red during the first half of the story, gradually introducing it as Sam and Annie's lives moved closer together. At the same time, she avoided blue whenever possible, giving the movie a warm, timeless feeling. Nyqvist's job was to make those artistic choices feel completely natural, and he succeeded so well that most audiences never noticed the visual design. They simply felt it. What's even more remarkable is that during the very same year, Nyqvist also photographed What's Eating Gilbert Grape, helping introduce a young Leonardo DiCaprio to the world. It's quite a contrast. One project captured the quiet loneliness of small-town America, while the other helped create one of Hollywood's most beloved romantic films. Few cinematographers have ever demonstrated that level of versatility. Long before Parker Posey became one of independent cinema's most recognizable faces, she filmed a small role in Sleepless in Seattle. She played one of the many women touched by Sam Baldwin's emotional radio interview. It wasn't a major part, but for a young actress just starting her career, appearing in a Tom Hanks film was a significant opportunity. Unfortunately, audiences never got to see it. During editing, Nora Ephron decided the scene slowed the film's pacing, so it was removed entirely. For many actors, having a scene cut from a major studio movie can be heartbreaking. But what happened afterward made this story different. Instead of leaving Posey wondering why her performance disappeared, Ephron personally wrote to her. She explained that the decision had nothing to do with Posey's acting and even praised her talent, calling her a gifted comedian. For Posey, it was a compliment she had never received before, and coming from a respected filmmaker, it meant a great deal. Ephron clearly meant every word. Rather than forgetting about the young actress, she continued casting her in future projects. Posey appeared in Mixed Nuts the following year, and later Ephron created another role for her in You've Got Mail. Meanwhile, Posey's career took off with films like Dazed and Confused, The House of Yes, and Best in Show, making her one of the defining actresses of independent cinema during the 1990s. Ironically, the first Nora Ephron movie Parker Posey ever worked on is the one audiences never actually saw. For the emotional climax of Sleepless in Seattle, composer Mark Shyamalan wanted absolute authenticity. Instead of creating a modern recreation of the music from An Affair to Remember, he hoped to use the original 1957 recording. He first attempted to recreate the orchestration from scratch. Every instrument was carefully matched, and a full orchestra was assembled. Technically, the new version sounded excellent, but something was missing. No matter how closely they copied the original, they couldn't reproduce the unique warmth and character of a classic Hollywood orchestra. That realization sent Shyamalan searching through 20th Century Fox's archives until he discovered the original master tapes from 1957. There was one problem. Magnetic tape deteriorates with age. Before it can even be played, it often has to be gently heated in a specialized process called baking to remove moisture and prevent it from falling apart. Even then, there may only be one chance to transfer the recording before it's permanently destroyed. The team carefully prepared the tape, loaded it onto the machine, and pressed play. Fortunately, the transfer worked perfectly. But almost immediately afterward, the fragile master tape began to crumble. The recording had survived just long enough to preserve itself for a new generation before literally falling apart. Considering that Sleepless in Seattle is a story about second chances and finding love when all hope seems lost, it's almost poetic that one of its most memorable musical moments survived by the narrowest possible margin. Years before directing Sleepless in Seattle, Nora Ephron experienced one of the most painful periods of her life. During her second pregnancy, she discovered that her husband was having an affair. Rather than hiding the experience, she turned it into the best-selling novel Heartburn, an honest and often humorous story about betrayal and heartbreak. Hollywood eventually adapted the novel into a film starring Meryl Streep and Jack Nicholson, making Ephron's personal pain known to audiences around the world. After writing Heartburn, she also penned When Harry Met Sally, another romantic classic that explored relationships from an entirely different perspective. Then came Sleepless in Seattle. What's remarkable is how completely hopeful the film feels. There is almost no cynicism anywhere in the story. Instead, it's built around the belief that love can appear unexpectedly, even after devastating loss. The same writer who once created one of cinema's most memorable stories about heartbreak also gave audiences one of its most optimistic romances. That emotional range is one of the reasons Nora Ephron remains one of the most influential voices in romantic comedy. If you've ever watched Sleepless in Seattle, you know how important an affair to remember is to the story. Annie doesn't just admire the film, she practically measures every romantic relationship against it. Because of that, millions of viewers who had never seen the 1957 classic suddenly became curious about it. Video rental stores reported renewed interest, and an entirely new generation discovered Deborah Kerr's unforgettable performance. Kerr had been one of Hollywood's finest actresses for decades. She earned 6 Academy Award nominations for Best Actress, but never managed to win a competitive Oscar, making her one of the Academy's most overlooked stars. Then something unexpected happened. Less than a year after Sleepless in Seattle became a worldwide success, the Academy finally honored Deborah Kerr with an honorary Oscar for her extraordinary career. Already battling Parkinson's disease, Kerr accepted the award before a standing ovation, thanking everyone for giving her such a wonderful life in film. No one can say with certainty that Sleepless in Seattle alone caused that recognition, but the movie unquestionably introduced her work to millions of new viewers and reminded Hollywood why she deserved to be celebrated. Ask almost anyone to remember Sleepless in Seattle, and chances are they'll immediately think of Celine Dion and Clive Griffin's version of When I Fall in Love. Most people are convinced it's the song playing when Sam and Annie finally meet atop the Empire State Building. But that's one of the biggest misconceptions surrounding the movie. Sony Pictures strongly wanted the song featured during the emotional finale. Executives believed it would become a massive hit and perfectly capture the film's ending. Nora Ephron completely disagreed. From the beginning, she wanted the soundtrack to feel timeless by relying on classic American standards instead of contemporary pop music. Introducing a brand new ballad at the story's emotional peak would have changed the atmosphere she had carefully built throughout the film. Instead, she used Jimmy Durante's Make Someone Happy during the climax, preserving the nostalgic tone she envisioned from the very beginning. So where did Celine Dion's song go? Ephron quietly moved it to the end credits. Technically, it appears in the movie, but only after the story has already ended. Anyone leaving the theater as soon as the credits rolled probably never heard it. Ironically, the song became one of the soundtrack's biggest successes, won a Grammy Award, and over time became permanently linked with Sleepless in Seattle. Today, many fans remember it as the movie's defining love theme, even though it never plays during the reunion scene itself. And that's one more example of how Nora Ephron remained completely committed to her creative vision. She trusted her instincts over studio pressure, and the result was one of the most beloved romantic comedies ever made. Those are 15 fascinating facts about Sleepless in Seattle. Which one surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed uncovering the hidden stories behind this classic, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another deep dive into the movies that define generations. Until next time, thanks for watching, and may your favorite films always have another secret waiting to be discovered.